Now, after taking a quick tour of the IIS administration tool and the configuration file, let's talk about the authentication methods that are available to us with an ASP.NET Web application. There's three basic types. There's Windows-based authentication, there's Forms-based authentication, and then there's Microsoft Passport. And so let's go through each of these and talk about what they are and what needs to be done to cause these things to work. Each method contains code needed to authorize users. Each one of these is, in essence, calling some code in the .NET framework to carry out the correct authorization, and there's different levels and functionalities. Now, in IIS, we looked at these just in the previous video about the authentication methods, and let's go into those a little bit deeper now. You have anonymous, basic authentication, digest authentication, and integrated windows. Now, this is on the web server. IIS is Internet Information Server, which is our web server. Now, let's take a look at anonymous. Everybody gains access. All you have to do is hit the web server over port 80, and you will be granted access. Now, you're actually accessing the files on the web server as a user called IUSR, Internet User, and then the name of the machine that the web server is. And in my case, this would be Leesburg LT. Now, obviously, let me go back just a second here. The only thing we need to watch is security on this account. Wherever this account has access, whatever group it's a member of, and that group has access to, is where anybody who hits our web server can go. So let's just be careful with that. That's one thing to always check. Basic authentication. Now, this is where if the user tries to access a file or a folder that there's no permissions set for them on, then they are prompted to supply a username and a password. A standard dialog box comes up. Now, this is good. It does put up a front door, and people who don't know the login ID and password can't go any further. But there's a problem here. This thing is part of the Hypertext Transfer Protocol specifications, so it works with all browsers. It's very clean, but there's a problem. Notice here, I've put this in italics, and I'm going to burn this into your brain. All info is passed in clear text, which means your username and your password are being passed unencrypted across the internet. This is not good. This is like going out in your front yard and yelling that, I'm going to the bank, I have $5,000 cash, and I'm going to make a deposit. Depending on what neighborhood you live in, you may not make it out. So it's not a good idea. Now, if you use basic authentication, secure socket layer encryption is strongly suggested. We'll come back to this in just a couple of minutes. Now, the next choice is digest authentication. This is very similar to basic, except that the data that you're sending when you fill in that login screen is automatically encrypted. Now, that sounds good, but it only works for Internet Explorer version 5 and above, which means unless you're in a corporate environment where you can dictate what browsers are going to be used, this kind of becomes spotty at best. Now, one of the big strong points here is this works with firewalls and proxy servers. They don't confuse it, they don't lose it, and your authentication works and it's being encrypted. It also requires Active Directory domain accounts. So if you're going to use digest authentication, now digest authentication is passing hash information back and forth. We won't get into the details on that. But understand if you're in a pure Microsoft shop, you have Active Directory running, and you can guarantee that your users will all be Internet version 5 or greater, then digest authentication may be the way to go for you. Integrated Windows authentication is just what it sounds like. You're basically setting up a trust relationship to where if you hit the SQL, if you hit the information server, Internet Information Server, and you have previously logged on to the Windows network via Active Directory, then you will be granted access. Now, this works with both NTLM, which is the security architecture for Windows NT 4.0, and it works with Kerberos, and it's actually Kerberos version 5, which is built into Windows 2000. Now, this is excellent, but again, you have to be in a certain environment. You have to be on an Active Directory network or NTLM and so forth, or it's not going to happen. Now, this will not work through firewalls, and this usually shoots this in the foot. Because if you've got to go through a firewall, then authentication like this, Windows authentication is not going to work. This is great for corporate intranets, again, where you have a lot of control over how your users are configured. Now that's the basics. So in the next video, we're going to start to take these apart piece by piece. We're going to talk about the different types of authentication: Windows authentication, Forms authentication, and Passport. And so we're going to, first up, we're going to look at Forms authentication.